Hey guys, Nick here. So in this Knime series of videos, we've walked through uploading data files into Knime, joining them, or what would be the Excel equivalent of a VLOOKUP, performing some math calculations, and then doing the equivalent of a sum-ifs. So next what we're going to do is we're going to backtrack a little bit. We're going to reset the workflow so we can bring in a few other variables, so then we can do some exploration from or based on those variables. And to be more specific, right now we have our data grouped by the employee's name, by the month, by the year, and what their pay is by month at a specific month for a specific year. So what we're going to do now is we're going to reset the nodes so we can bring in details on what department the employee works in. So then essentially we want to take a look at where or what departments have the highest labor expenses and see if maybe we can gauge any trends out of there or just to see what we see, honestly. So let's get started with that. First, we already have all these nodes executed, as you can see by the green dots on each node. But what we're going to do is when we go back to our joiner node, this is where we combine the two data sets with what would be in Excel like a VLOOKUP. If you're writing SQL queries, it's just a join of two tables, right? So what we want to add to this combined or this joint table is we want to add the department detail. So to do that, I'm going to go back into this joiner node, and you don't necessarily have to reset them. Once you make a change to a node and you hit apply and hit OK, if there's a change, the node will recognize it and it'll reset itself and whichever nodes are connected to after it in the workflow. So all we're going to do now is with the joiner node or this VLOOKUP, we attach the salary or the hourly pay, you could say, and we excluded all these other variables from the right table or our HR's detail table. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the department and we're actually going to drop it under the include section because we want to include the department since that's what we're going to be looking at later, right? So we're going to hit apply. So see here's your little warning symbol or your warning sign where it says now that you've applied new settings, this node and then all connected nodes basically connected afterwards in the workflow are going to be reset. So we're just going to hit OK, OK again, and now you can see the node we adjusted is yellow, so configured, ready for execution, and all the other nodes that follow it are also back to the yellow status. So now that we've added the department detail in there, we're going to go all the way to the very end. Or actually, let's execute this first, right? Because then we can execute this and we can actually execute the math formula, right? Because here we just join and then we do some math on the two joined tables. At the group by level, I know the level of detail we were working with was employee name, month, and year. Well, now we've got department too, so we want to bring the department detail over in our, call it a quote-unquote sum-ifs. We want to bring the department detail over because we're going to do manipulations based on what department the employee's in. So we've added it into the include to the group column area. Our aggregation, we still want to see weekly pay. The sum of it, technically we know here that it's not weekly anymore, it's monthly, right? So hit apply, hit OK, and now, did you guys notice when we hit apply after we made a change here, the reason we didn't get that warning or that pop-up that we got when we adjusted the joiner node is because this group by is already in the configured status. It wasn't executed. So because it wasn't executed and we're making adjustments, you don't get the pop-up. So anyways, hit OK. Now right click, execute this guy, And now we should see the department. Here we go. Department is tagged along with the rest of the data. Right? So we've got the first step out of the way. The next step in exploring our labor expense by department, we're going to now take this data table and we are going to basically sum up by department. So we're going to do another group by or another sum ifs if you're still thinking Excel terms. We're going to do another sum ifs, but this time we're going to knock out the employee name because now the employee name is not going to be as important since we're going to be focused on specifically the metric by department. So what we do is if you saw the other video, under your node repository, if you type in group in the search, you'll find this group by node. Drag and drop, and let's connect the output from this group by to this new one. Let's get this a little closer. Now we're going to rename this to a department roll up. There we go. Now double click to configure, and now we don't want the employee name, right? It's not really relevant to us. Let's still look at it by, actually I was going to say let's look at it by month and year still, but let's look at it, no, let's do it by year. Let's do it by year. Let's get rid of month, so we'll add in year. Obviously we need the department, and then we don't want the weekly pay. It's weekly pay we're going to aggregate, right? Technically it says monthly at this point, but we're going to aggregate it to the year level, so we don't move it to the group by. We're going to handle this weekly pay under the aggregation tab. Add it in here, and like we saw before, we're going to go under the sum. So now that we've got that in place, you guys already know my preference is to keep the original column name. I don't like the aggregation method column name. We'll hit apply, hit OK, and now hit F7 to execute. And now let's look at the group table, or the output table, really. So now we've got our year, our department, and our expense. This says weekly pay, right? But technically we know we rolled it up at the month and then the year level. So we know this is really the labor expense by department per year. Okay? So now that we've got that set in stone, what we can do next is take it a step further, actually. So now let's do another group by, and now let's roll up this data at the yearly level, right? So this is going to start to get us prepped. It's going to start to get us prepped so we can do a percentage. So we can look at the expense by department as a percent of total expense for the year, right? So what we're going to do now in this group by is we are going to bring in the year, and we're going to get rid of the department. We don't want that anymore. We just want the total yearly labor expense. Our aggregation under the manual aggregation tab, again, it's this weekly pay, which right now we've got it at the year level. Just give me the sum, keep original names, apply, OK. Now we're going to execute, and now we should just see the total labor expense by year, and that's it. There we go. Okay, so we're getting there. We're setting ourselves up, right? So now that we've got these two, what we're going to do next is we're going to basically look at it like this, right? To calculate the percentage that each department made up of total labor expense for the year, you're going to basically have to have next to each other the expense for the year of each department, and next to it you're going to want to have the total expense for the year, so then you can calculate what the department did as a percent of the total labor expense for the year, right? So think of this as like two different tables holding these two different key points we need, and we're going to join them again so we get those two columns next to each other, and we can just do a simple math formula off of those two columns next to each other. Ready? So we'll work through it. go to your node repository, look for your, oh, if I can spell it correctly, look for your joiner node, drag, drop. Alright, so this is where you gotta think a little bit. I'm gonna drop this joiner node down here. I want every department's expense by year, right? And then attached to that, I want the total expense for each year. So I know the most detail is under the department by year. So I'm gonna make that my left table because you guys know I prefer the left outer join than the other guys. Anyways, so I'll set the higher detailed one as my left table, and then I'm gonna set the more macro level view as the right table. Let's configure this node. I'm gonna say a left outer join based on the year and the year, right? Because that's really all that's gonna, you want the department's expense divided by the total yearly expense. But really, you're just repeating the yearly expense for a particular year down to every department that's listed in that year, right? So there's no other level of connection there, right? Because the total yearly expense doesn't have department level detail, right? So we've got the year set up as the key columns. Under column selection, I'm going to include everything from the year department expense table, the left table. But then for the yearly total expense, I don't really need the year. I'll back that out. The weekly pay, which is where we've summed up our total pay labor expense by year. That's what we really need, right? Because then what we're going to do, like I said earlier, is take this weekly pay at the department level, divide it into the weekly pay at the year level. So once we've got that, what I'm going to do here, right, so this option here, we're going to have two weekly pay columns. What I'm going to do here is when you have duplicate columns, you have these options. You can filter the duplicates. You can set it so the node doesn't execute anymore when it recognizes duplicate columns, or you can add in automatic suffix to the second duplicate column, or you can add a custom suffix. So since I know this weekly pay is going to be the yearly one technically, I'm going to make my custom suffix yearly. Right? So got that together, and then what I'm going to do is hit apply, hit OK. Now the node is configured, ready to execute, going to execute, and now let's see what we get in our output. Okay, check this out. So 2013, for each department, the weekly pay, which is technically yearly, constant for that year. The weekly pay, which is technically yearly by department, that has variation in it. It's exactly what we expected to see, because now we're going to take these values and divide them into the total yearly expense. But let's, for sanity's sake, let's double check that these numbers work. So what I'm going to do is copy these values, open up an Excel file. We're just going to do simple percentage. Don't like how that's wrapped. So now I'm going to add these up. These should equal to this value here. So ready? I'm going to say equals sum. Looks like it. Let's just double check with the formula. There we go. We're on the money now. So let's go back to where we were at in our Knime window. So now that we've got, why did I exit out? Sorry. So now that we've got that set up, we can perform a simple math formula node to basically say this divided into this for every row down. Right? So we've got department yearly and total yearly, just so I know what's in here. And now let's go to the node repository. Let's search. going to search for math formula. Let's drag this node, drop it over here. We'll hook these two up. Double click into this math formula. We're going to say add a new column, and we're going to say, I'm going to call this column department percent of year. That's our new column. And click into the expressions. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this weekly pay, which we know is the yearly department expense. Double click to add that into the expressions field. Divided by the total yearly expense. Hit apply. Hit OK. Now that we're configured, gonna right click, execute. Now let's see what our output shows. So now if we, what am I doing here? Okay. We're just gonna do some basic math to double check. Let's take this guy right here. We're gonna say, what's going on here? Sorry guys. Alright, so we're gonna say 107,326, which was the 2013 expense of the operations department, divided by the total expense of 722,545 for the year, should be equal to this 14.9 that we see here. So 14, looks like we round to the third decimal, 14.85, which you round it 14.9, right? So looks like we're good to go. But just for sanity's sake, we can try one more. 81,335 that the finance team spent, which seems oddly very low, right? Divide that into the 754,610. That was the total yearly expense for 2014. We should get 10.8%. Yep, looks like we're rounding up again, 10.8%. Looks like we're on the money. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how to figure out your percentages of. So X percent of Y for a given field. Well, if you guys have any questions, you know, like always, drop it in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And like always, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.